We were all working from home virtually, remotely, and we saw people at their homes with their children, with their pets, in their bedrooms, with the laundry piled up. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. So all these people that went through all this, they jumped through a lot of hoops when they used to come to the office dressed to the nines, looking perfect. And they never talked about any problems at home. You didn't even realize they had small children or that they had issues in their life. And then all of a sudden it was like right in front of your face on every Zoom call. And you could see, they struggle just like I do, and they somehow get it together, and it made them more human and it made them more relatable.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Karl Ponto. Each week I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week I'm excited to connect with Paige Arnof-Fenn. She is the founder and CEO of global branding and digital marketing firm Mavens and Moguls based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Her clients include Microsoft, Virgin, the New York Times Company, Colgate, venture-backed startups, as well as nonprofit organizations. She graduated from Stanford University and Harvard Business School. Paige serves on several boards, is a popular speaker and columnist who has written for Entrepreneur and Forbes. Congrats on your success with Mavens and Moguls, and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thank you, Karl. I'm so excited to talk today.
Yes, I'm really excited to have you on because I know one of your expertise focus points is that personal brand, and it's so important these days for people to understand that even if you're an entrepreneur or an employee, having that personal brand is really important for your success in your career or for your business. And these days, it's so much more challenging to stand out with all the noise, and AI has only contributed to that. So how do you recommend people stand out when they're trying to build a personal brand these days?
Such a great question. It's such an important discussion because I think we all survived the pandemic. And if we learned anything during COVID, it's that you really don't exist today unless you can be found online. Before anybody returns your phone call, invites you to lunch or coffee, or invites you to be a guest on their podcast, they're going to check you out online. And if they go to Google and type in your name and nothing comes up, that's the kiss of death. And on the other side, if they type in your name and a lot of digital dirt comes up, that's another problem so you really need to understand, like, what do people know about you? What do they think about you? And what does your online presence say about you? I think one of the biggest mistakes business owners, employees, job candidates, entrepreneurs make is that they don't think of themselves as a brand. People will say to me all the time, I'm not LeBron James or Taylor Swift or Beyonce. I'm not really a brand. I just own a business, or I just work at a big company. And that's just not true. Everybody's a brand today. And so you really need to know what your brand says about you, and are those messages going to stand out and help you get noticed in a really positive way. Some advice that I always give people is you need to do kind of a communications audit on yourself. It's not being narcissistic or having a big ego. You need to know, what do people find when they, do a social media audit, see what pops up. And are those platforms, are those stories that you're telling consistent? Because if people see one version of you on Facebook and another version on LinkedIn, and then your website says something else, and then for people that know you in person, when they see you at the grocery store, at the PTA meeting, at a yoga class, is that a different version? Or are these people different facets of a consistent story to tell? And you mentioned the magic words of AI. I mean, the problem that AI has a lot of great benefits. It can save you time. There are a lot of good reasons to leverage the new technology. and the new AI tools that are out there. The problem is that if you rely too much on it, what you come back with is a lot of generic robotic web copy, or if you're writing a blog post or sending out an email newsletter, and if all you're using is an AI generated generic kind of jargon filled buzzword heavy communication, you're just going to blend into the sea of sameness. So, I tell my clients and the people that we work with, you've got to figure out what's unique, special, and different about you. Where do you stand out? Where are your strengths? Play to your strengths. Things that you're not good at, let somebody else participate in those conversations. You stick to the things that really are unique, special, and different, where you have a competitive advantage and you have a unique story to tell, because it's the stories that sell. And, you and I approach things in a very similar way. You call it H to H, human to human. I call it P to P, person to person. And that's where you're really going to make those important connections, when people understand what's your backstory, where did you come from, where have you been successful, where have you fallen flat on your face, how did you get back up, dust yourself off, and get back on the horse, and what happened. Tell those stories, make people connect with you, show where you're vulnerable, tell those stories so that they remember. You're going to own that real estate in their brain, so when they have a problem that your product or service can help them solve, you want them to think of you first. And the only way they're going to remember you, so that you pop out from that sea of sameness, is if you tell those stories that connect with them on an emotional level. You make them laugh, you make them cry, and that's when they go, oh, I got to call Karl. He's the guy. He's the one that told me about this. He's the one that, was able to break through nightmare situation, and he did it. He nailed it. He got it done. And they're going to come back to you for that relationship. And if you just sound like everyone else, you're a commodity. And when you're a commodity, you compete on price, and anybody can lower the price. That's not a way to compete in the world today.
Yeah, I think there's so much good stuff to unpack there, but I really liked the part where you talked about how you show up on different platforms, and in real life needs to be authentic and consistent, and how part of that authenticity is being vulnerable and talking about when you've been knocked down or dropped to a knee and how you got back up, and on those challenges that oftentimes people think if they share those, and it's a sign of weakness, or it's a sign of lack of capability. But when people see especially online, see that like an overly polished mirror shine, no flaws at all front, then they see it as a front. They don't really connect with it on the same way, because it takes those cracks and rough edges and dents for people to be able to get a foothold or a grip on how they can connect with you and what they share with you when it comes to life experiences and values and beliefs. And those don't come across the same way if you're overly sanitize your online presence. So even though it does seem counterintuitive when we think about, talking about a time where I made a mistake or when I failed, it's often those stories, when told well and told with that, but here's what I learned from it, here's how I'm better because of it. That really is a opportunity for people to connect with you, because we all struggle with something, and the people that you're wanting to connect with are often struggled with the same things that you've struggled with or are currently struggling with it. And if you're able to explain how you've learned how to navigate that challenge and are able to share that wisdom with them, then that makes your brand a lot more valuable in their eyes, because you have something that they really want to be. And it's not just down to anyone in this industry can do it, or anyone with the same sort of education or all the accomplishments or awards people like to tout, those don't really build the same sort of trust and relationships that sharing the challenges and the life lessons that you struggled through are able to generate those connections a lot better.
Absolutely. And you even see it in Hollywood. The pendulum swings back and forth. But it's interesting, if you look at some of the most famous actresses that got nominated for awards, it's when they were their most authentic selves. Pamela Anderson, who everyone remembers from the Baywatch days, she looked kind of like a plastic Barbie doll, but she got the most acclaim of anything she's ever done by not wearing makeup, by showing up kind of, dressed in beautiful dresses, but she was completely without, the lipstick, the nail polish, the fake eyelashes, the lips that have been plumped, like all the cosmetic things she used to do, she stopped doing, and she was taken seriously as an actress for the first time really in her career. Demi Moore, the same thing. She was nominated for Best Actress. I think it works in the most, regular businesses, and it works in Hollywood now too. It's kind of where in the world today. Again, we all went through a lot during COVID when, we were all meeting on Zoom. Everything had shut down. We were all working from home virtually, remotely. And we saw people at their homes with their children, with their pets, in their bedrooms, with the laundry piled up. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. So all these people that went through all this, they jumped through a lot of hoops when they used to come to the office dressed to the nines, looking perfect. And they never talked about any problems at home. They, you didn't even realize they had small children or that they had issues in their life. And then all of a sudden it was like right in front of your face on every Zoom call. And you could see, they struggled just like I do, and they somehow get it together, and it made them more human, and it made them more relatable. You had more empathy and more respect for people when you said, God, I have bad days too, and they're getting through it, and I'm it. And I think people just really crave those really human connections and human relationships now, because we all know that the bloom is off the rose. Nobody's getting a free pass in life. Everybody's got a different set of problems, but everybody's got issues in their life. And, I think, brands work the same way people do. When you build that consistent voice and that consistent message across all the different touch points, you're building that trusted relationship with your audience. Imagine if you went into a Starbucks or a McDonald's, and every time you showed up in a different location, in a different city, it was a different experience. It looked different. The menu was different. That would be very confusing, and you wouldn't have the same relationship with that brand that you do when this is what I like, this is the size, flavor, this is exactly what's going to, make me happy midday for a snack or a lunch. And because that is something you grew up with. There's a nostalgic relationship with that brand, and you know what to expect. If on Facebook you've got pictures from like getting together with your college, or doing stupid things on the beach, and everyone's kind of looking, drunk and in kind of bathing suits, and they're being silly. And then you go over to LinkedIn and the person looks all buttoned up, very professional, and they're talking about being a thought leader. And then they run into you on the soccer field. Your kids go to the same school, and you look like a hot mess. What version of you do they believe? What version of you is going to show up at the meeting? Do they want to introduce you to their colleagues? Or would they feel referring business to you if they don't know which version is going to show up? I don't think so. But if you always kind of have a sporty, casual look, what they say in the UK, smart casual. And even if, you're coming from a Pilates class or a yoga class, you look together, you don't look like a hot mess. How you dress, what you drive, everything communicates. Your website, the signature on your email, if you have on-hold music on the phone, all of those things are sending a signal about your brand and, what matters to you. And I think the people who put thought into it and have a consistent theme that ties together, that shows a professional image, you get one chance to make a great first impression. And if you don't make a good first impression, it takes you a lot of time, money, and energy to go back and redo that. So encourage
I think
people. Go ahead.
Yeah, so for businesses as well, the same thing applies where if they're reaching out to potential clients or to potential opportunities, and they're immediately just showing that they don't have a sense of understanding of who their audience is or what they care about, and they're just kind of talking about things that they're excited about, or they're just immediately trying to sell right away, or all these common mistakes that are easier to make and at larger scale, again, because of AI and just all that people, I can generate a email blast that according to ChatGPT, my audience is actually says they'll love this stuff, but I'm not going to double check that it's actually accurate. And then they send this blast out, or they send out a cold message on LinkedIn or email someone. Again, you're making that first impression without really understanding how it's reflecting on you and how you're communicate what you think you're communicating isn't how it's being received, because you're not really understanding your audience well enough, and you're not making that good first impression. And because then when they do end up looking up, if they say then that your website says what your values are, and it completely clashes with the way you go about making introductions and stuff, that sort of inconsistency at a operational level can be just as jarring as the personal brand misalignment that you're talking about. So even though it's important for individuals to have the brand consistency, I think a lot of companies these days, especially when they have siloed marketing and sales and customer support teams, that almost makes the customers feel like they're getting into a relationship with someone who has like multiple personality disorder, because the marketing makes them feel one way, and then they start talking to a salesperson, it's complete like tonal shift. And then if they end up buying, then all of a sudden the ongoing kind of customer support team feels completely different than that. And it leads to this really confusing situation, like you kind of described, with a customer walking into a different Starbucks, had different offers and food and interior design and that sort of stuff. Whereas for even like a B2B company, if all the different touch points aren't consistent and you're not aligning the messaging with what's on your website or what your different teams are saying at different points in the relationship, it really makes it hard for people to trust what your company's doing, because the message you're communicating is so disjointed. And even if a lot of people make the mistake of thinking their brand is like the logo and the letterhead and stuff, that can all be fine. But if it's the interaction and the way you make people feel at different points of the building this relationship aren't authentic and consistent, then it's going to be just as jarring as if you walked into another Starbucks a town over and it was a completely different experience.
Absolutely. And I know I listened to this on one of your other podcasts about the importance of active listening. When you meet people, don't just kind of make it a one-way conversation where you're telling them about, all the pretty shiny objects that you can do for them. That's not really what they want to hear. They want to hear what's in it for them. So listen to them, listen to their stories, ask them open-ended questions, and that gives you material to follow up with them in a way that's very intentional and targeted and related to the problems that they're having. that's what they're trying to solve their problems. They don't really care about your problems. And so, we work with a lot of B2B service businesses. You've got accountants, attorneys, managers, and those people are a dime a dozen. A lot of people have law firms and accounting firms and money management firms, but what's your niche? Where do you stand out? Where can you really help people in a way that is unique, special, and different than any of your competitors? We started working with a woman who had a money management business. She was a wealth manager. And when she met us, she just said, I have these brochures, I've got a professional website. But I just feel like, I meet with people, but, they don't really understand why we're different. And I said, well, you're not giving them any reason to differentiate. You're saying if you took your name off your company's name off the brochure or off the website and you dropped in any other company name, they wouldn't know the difference, because everything you're talking just generic qualities. They're not core values that are unique to you. And you can understand when you fly a lot, if you're on Delta or American or United, that's a very different experience than when you're flying like Southwest. Southwest has a different culture. They have different messages. When the stewardess, the folks go through the messages, the standard, fasten your seatbelts, and if we need to do an emergency landing, put your mask on before. At Southwest, they don't follow a script that they're just, blah, blah, blah. They're kind of doing it with their own personality. If you closed your eyes, you would know that you're not on American, United, or Delta. You would know you're on a Southwest Air. The way that they board, the way that they give seats, everything about it is to their brand. And so this money manager that we were working with, when we started to really dig into her business, what we realized is, she's a woman-owned business, is unique it's definitely not, the majority of these businesses are owned by men. And her clientele is also mostly women. And they're women that have come into a lot of money, either from inheritance, from divorce, from a lottery, from a sale of one of their businesses. And she really helps them in a way that they have become like almost personal friends of hers, getting them through these financial transitions. Well, when we rebranded her and started to use that language and use these testimonials and case studies on her website, in her brochures, she became known as, if you come into a lot of wealth as a woman, this is the person you need to talk to. So what everyone in the community started to really think of her differently. And so when they knew someone who had just gotten a divorce and got a big alimony, or just sold their very successful company, and now they're looking to, invest in a very higher level way, it seems like everyone in the community was doing her marketing for her. People say, oh my God, Jane, I'm so happy for you. Congrats on the sale of your business. Do you know, Susan, I would like to introduce you to someone. She's going to be the perfect person to help you get through this next year. Or, I was so sorry to hear about the death of your dad. I know you're going to be inheriting a lot of his business. I have someone I want to introduce you to. So she went from being in a sea of sameness, totally generic, to having like everyone around her become her marketing department. So by the time people got introduced to her, they were ready to hire her. And that, between having a solid brand with a great message to a very targeted niche, to being generic on AI for being a wealth manager, night and day.
All right. Well, thank you so much for connecting with me today, Paige. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection podcast, please like, leave a review, and share it. If you'd like to connect with myself or Paige, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.
Thank you.